Okay, we should be live. Should be live. How's my audio? Just going over some final things here. Okay, I'm going to pause that because I don't know if I'm muted for the, yeah, I'm muted for the audio input capture, at least on this scene. Okay. So let's go through. Okay, at least I had a link right there. Are we live? I mean, I show that I'm unmuted. I should have audio. I'm seeing audio levels in OBS. Okay, good. I'm hearing from Ender Ball that says we can see and hear you. And otherwise, good audio. Okay, and I mean that can be changed. OBS has levels and things like that we can adjust. I want to make sure that I don't clip anything. And sometimes I'm aware that people say, um, you know, they some people complain about audio levels and say it's low, and then other people say I can hear you fine. So, um, but how is the audio level now? And I've adjusted up from the settings I've had in previous streams, and nobody has really reported that I'm effectively quiet there. And and I'm aware, and I think Computer Reset's got some stuff going on this morning. Um, I think the volunteers are actually moving stuff around. It's not an open event. It's not any scheduled where the people are paying the flat rate to come in and pay the $150. And I will answer questions about Computer Reset if I can as well. There may be some volunteers that are in here as well. If they're not at Computer Reset. And so, yeah, I just maybe the consensus of if my audio levels are good. I'm showing at the peak. I'm hitting into the yellow and not quite in the red for clipping or anything like that. I'm at minus 2.7 dB, if that means anything. And okay. And then of course I get warnings from YouTube. The audio stream's current bitrate is lower than the recommended bitrate. Open the widget. But I hope everybody's doing fine. There's ultimately some information too that I really hope does not come out in a way as well. I'm not going to fill anybody in on that. If I see any of that talk, I'll probably just mute it because and it's not anything of the information of the 7496 executive workstation. It's just something else of a nature that I've been in communication with Computer Reset. Now, I do plan to get back over there. That trip is still a little bit up in the air. I'd even like to get to the point where, I mean, of course, to get over there to to get stuff. I've put up the link to the 7496 at the Ardent Tool site. Major Tom has been hard at work, went through and put up information. And of course, it's linked to a lot of my earlier videos and everything else. We have pictures of Hugh Fisher's unit. And a lot of it is of course, a little bit of placeholders or links to the Mul 30 information, not to really duplicate, because that stuff is on the Mul 30 page. There is still some areas. There's probably one aspect that be updated as far as the riser, saying it's the same as the Mul 30, with the additional text that top slot, of course, is masked out. And I don't have I've got all the parts, as you can see behind me. I've got all the tools, and I'll bring up one thing that I'm going to exclude as well. I'm going to go through and mute any talk of it. I'm not even going to refer to it by name. But I'll go through and I can probably start assembling with some commentary at some point as well. We'll just kind of play it by ear. And I want to show what exactly is going on. Looks like we're getting some good feedback. I don't know if Major Tom, I don't know if he's busy or just a little bit late, or whether, he has the ability to show up. I didn't really work with him earlier, but he's resolved a lot of stuff. There's been a lot of chatter with even Lewis Oland, that originally compiled a lot of information on PS2s and otherwise on the SIF news group, likely not to attend a YouTube presentation for what he thinks of them. But and we're going to start. I'll probably go through and answer questions as they come up. Let me go through and do a little bit of the preface that I was going through. This is not a tool. We're not going to talk about this in this live stream. We're not going to talk about this aspect to the 7496 at all anymore. It's, as far as I'm concerned, and everyone out there knows the history, we're past that. We're just going to move on, and so this is out of the picture. Put that where it deserves. I mean, I have the tool of my screwdriver. Now, I haven't figured out what the security bit is on that power supply. It's a little bit, that dimple's a little bit bigger in the end of it than the Torx security bits that I have. And that's another thing that goes through, and we're gonna talk about that aspect. How things are interconnected, what a little bit of reveal. And so I'm seeing questions. I'm going to go through and I'm going to answer them in order. And so Nerd Organist, and I'm going to try and pronounce things, of course, as much as I can, of course. Nerdy Organist, and it says, ask the question, were these workstations prototypes? I've never seen one besides from CR. CR meaning computer reset. No, they're not prototypes. I'll tell you that right now. And I can actually relate a story of years and years ago. And there's a reason that you haven't seen them besides at Computer Reset. So they have a working model number, a 7496. So what it was is, and this is decades ago, this might even be as far back as 3 decades ago or even further. There's a crash of a jet reported in California, and they said, "Hey, F-117, which is, of course, the stealth fighter, crashed in California, but it's an experimental aircraft, not a production aircraft." And I saw that news report, and of course, as people go through and question the news and say fake news and all that these days, that it had a destination of F-117. And I said, there's no X in front of that. That's not a prototype. That's a production jet. So I knew or was aware that from that statement of the press release, not including the X or just saying F-117, I knew right off the bat that was a production aircraft. But no, the 7496 is not a prototype. It's in fact, the components in there, we'll get into those, and we'll get into the dates and everything else. Now, for the why haven't you seen anything besides Computer Reset? You've never seen these before besides Computer Reset. We did have Dave Murray, 8-Bit Guy, had that video that I've talked about. I threw that item to the floor. But nobody after that popped up and said from anywhere else to say, hey, I have one of those. I got it from IBM or whatever else back in the day. And I meant to have the box over here, and certainly people can review that earlier video. It's got addresses on there. The initial address is, and the box preserved a lot of stuff. It has the model number and submodel, the 037, which we believe, it's truly the subtype is 7496-037 is what I have. What the majority of the units are with this screen that we'll get talking about as well, which is a color screen. The monochrome model will likely have a different model subtype. It'll be 7496- whatever. They'll change the coding of one of those digits or something else to denote that is a monochrome unit. And certainly, and the monochrome units are it has a 8500 series IBM monitor on top. That's the monochrome. And I'm not really familiar with my IBM monochrome monitors. 8503, I think, was a smaller monochrome monitor. And we see in the Computer Reset advertisement that both the color and the monochrome models were offered from Computer Reset. And there's only one known monochrome that was there, monochrome unit that was there at Computer Reset. And the way I understood things is that was going to be returned to IBM for their archives. And I also have knowledge of ownership and some other factors that I'm not going to publicly reveal that information at all. It's been public knowledge. I have a unit. That unit was provided to me by Computer Reset in the thoughts that I had the parts, experience, and knowledge to get that going. And I relied on a lot of the technicians of what IBM field tech was back in the day, that FRU, that field replaceable unit level, to get mine working. And we'll go start covering that in a moment. But so the 7496 appears to have made from a place that's just to like the northeast of Orlando, Florida. There's a post there's a school there now, some sort of college or university level, or I don't know if it's private. I don't think it's affiliated in with the University of Florida now. But back at that whatever point, 1988, 89, they look to have made from that location, constructed at that location likely. Um, so the prototype angle, and also the manufacturing area. I kind of answered one of the questions. Were they made in Scotland? And particular that would be the Greenock, Scotland plant. And in the IBM nomenclature, that is 55. That is the star of the serial number. They have 2 digits for the manufacturing plant or factory code, or that 2-digit number can mean various things, and it's always the 2 digits in combination. It's not that the 2 is decoded separately from the 7, but these are marked as 27-011 character or digit whatever for the serial numbers. And there's a particular sequence of serial numbers that has been made evident. Again, I'm not going to reveal ownership. I'm not going to talk about who has what serial number or where particular serial numbers are at. I can say there's more than a few in existence. I'm not going to confirm any upper level numbers. We don't know. But from the time of manufacture there in Florida, it appears that they were sent to a Kentucky location. I haven't even looked that up on the map. I need to go through and actually look it up on Google Maps and find out if it still exists or what the size, what that facility looks like, because I have an address. I showed that in the unboxing video that was right as I crested over, I think, 1,000 subscribers. So it appears that they were sent up to that location for the IBM facility in Kentucky. I don't know how many units that were made in Florida. Now, the 27 designation means manufactured for IBM. And that has no country of origin associated with that. So your serial number started as 27 dash whatever again. The clinical workstation, the 7690, that were thought to be, or there's been a little bit of speculation that they were associated with the 7496. They also had a 27 manufacturing plant, IBM manufacturing plant encoding, yet they were made in Mexico. So 27 means that it's manufactured for IBM. And it doesn't matter for the country of origin. Okay. Now, there's other aspects to that as well. And IBM, in those instances, a lot of the time, what they would do is they would say, hey, we want you to design a system. And sometimes, like with the 7496, they included some Model 30 planers and risers, just to say, hey, we want you to build a system around this planer, or we want you to build a system to these specifications. And that company would go through and come up with whatever it was. Now, the date of manufacture looks to be, the literature out there on the executive workstation, the manual, the guide to operations, has like 1989 dates on it, I think. So it's produced long after the PS2s are introduced even after the PS2 Model 25 was derived from the Model 30. And that being that the Model 25 being that all one unit with the integrated screen that did not rotate. It was all one assembly. Louis Olin even found where there's a bar at the bottom of the Model 25 case that can be bolted down, and it's got apparently 3 mounting holes. I meant to pull out one and take a picture of it and everything like that, but the it's where if you bolted it down the center, you could, IBM says, hey, you can pivot that, but you can't remove it, and that was a security feature. And then they talked about if you bolted it down in the 3 locations, that would affix it to the desktop entirely. They're talking about actually, I guess, putting in a lag bolt or having some other bolt assembly that would go through the desktop. And of course, the Model 25 being in the environments, school environments and everything else, intending to keep those units from being moved around. In fact, there's an interesting, and even Chris Lenderman found it. There's a, I'm trying to think of the movie. He went through and showed it, but it's and the setup for this is great. It's a computer room, and it has the students talking, and so there's Model 25s that are set up in there. Kind of cool otherwise. But no, the 7496 is not a prototype. It's based on a Model 30 planar. There's no other reason, like the clinical workstation, and these are actually deployed. The 7690s is based on a Model 25 planar. And it is, in fact, I would have to go through and see if I have the link for that I could pop up really quick, because there's a cool page that Santo has got set up on that, and even Major Tom now has got that on. In fact, that's how I can do it. Is I will do. I'll talk about the 7690. This is based on a Model 25 planar, and it has a real-time clock riser that was special to the unit, and it actually has an integrated touch panel flat screen, LCD screen. Santo actually got his working a few weeks ago. Really, really cool for all that. And there's links to that IBM 7690 nursing stations. It's typically referred to as a clinical workstation or nursing station. Yep, it's a PS2, and it just shows the pictures of the Model 25 planar, that special riser. And it's a unit that's built on that that Model 25 planar. The PS2 personal typing system, which is also linked from the Arden tool. And I haven't looked over this one really as much. Okay, here we go. Okay, and they show enough of it. It looks, in fact, in this picture, it looks very much different from, from the one I saw. Although it, you can see the Model 30 as being right on top, and different front bezel. The power switch is a little bit displaced. And the personal typing system, that's a Type 6900 is the way it shows here. I'll give the link to that at the Arden tool. But that is based on the Model 30 planar, the same way as the executive workstation. And it's of course got more inside. It's a much larger case. It's double the size of the Model 30 case alone. Even getting to the point almost like my so-called Max Model 30, that it's got additional stuff on there for doing what, you know, what is needed with the system. Now, I'm going to get back to the executive workstation. And I want to go through for the other questions because I knew there was, and I don't know what you're saying, turkey adapter, for Bill Milligan. So the, and there was speculation on the monitor of whether it was an 8508. 8503. Yeah, I think it's an 8503 monitor that's on the monochrome unit. So that I answered the question about the planer. It was the planer made in Scotland from Andrew Ball. Okay, and okay, yeah, ground control the Major Tom. um, and there was a recent, and that really, Thomas really liked a recent video that was just put out, the ground control the Major Tom. It was actually a YouTube short about somebody visiting the facility. And it might even mean Epitronics little short. He really enjoyed that. So as the IBM history guy said earlier, these had a turkey adapter, and that's from Bill Milligan. And so there's an adapter that's in the 7690, and of course I put that link on up in chat. That is, it's a PRC adapter, and it actually interfaces to the touchscreen. It does have some unpopulated sockets on there, and connections, assumably like a store loop connector that IBM used for linking point of sale systems and stuff like that. Now, and the functionality of that 7690 may be quite a bit into that PRC adapter, that the MAL 25 planer and riser real-time clock, all that is just a host for that adapter. And that PRC adapter needs to be studied more. Now, IBM did go through and even made a MAL 30 with what's called a channel adapter. And that is for a system 370 in this instance, mainframe, that they had an adapter that they put in, an 8-bit adapter. They put in a MAL 30, and that was to connect up a mainframe terminal type. I think it was like a page printer. I think that was maybe available on the desktop side as well, but available to be connected up to an IBM mainframe for printing purposes, evidently. And that's the only device that connected up to the mainframe and for that Model 30. But the Model 30 was only a host system in this case. All the processing was done on that adapter, effectively. All the communication from the mainframe and emulating the channel adapter. And channel adapter just means that there's microchannel versions. Curious Mark is planning to go through and work with a channel adapter, which will probably need a P/370 adapter from me to do that, which I'm willing to loan to him and everything else so he can get that running. But channel adapter just goes through and it connects on equipment, terminals and other equipment to the mainframe, or 3174s, 3274s, controllers that also connect up terminals and things like that as well. mainframe printers, but they had a setup of the Mul 30 being a host in that instance as well. So there's instances where the um, the Mul 30 planar or the Mul 25 planar was used to derive a system. In this instance, the 7496 came out. It appears in 1988, 1989 timeframe, and it was even pretty woefully inadequate for the time based on the level. Now I want to use the full name. It's as on the badge. It's out of view here, of course, but this is a custom terminal executive workstation, is what the badge says. Custom terminal. And that didn't come out. That picture of the badge didn't really come out until I had one in my hands, this one. Um, and custom terminal brings in a lot of other equation things into the equation otherwise, that it could have an adapter in there um, to go through and do what's called ripple over the network, a remote initial program load. It could have, a token ring board or an Ethernet board, or even emulation software on diskette with an emulation adapter. And of course, the software has to be in that 3.5-inch 720 KB format. But you'd run a little program from the diskette when it powered up, and it'd have an emulation adapter to connect onto a mainframe or a mid-range IBM mid-range system. The 5250 emulation is possible for another custom terminal. It does have a small footprint. We've seen how small the case is, how unexpandable it is. It may be designed for a tight space like the clinical workstation or the nursing station, that 7690, which actually mounted to a wall. It was out of the way. These could have been more for the, a nursing area, just so it didn't take up much desktop space, yet had that nice color monitor to be able to see status or something else. That monitor is just not very big at all, but it's it's a Sony Triniton. We'll get into a lot of that. So okay, I'm sure I saw one of these, the color version, when I was at Hillington and the Glasgow Rehabilitation Center in 1987. And IBM, I'm not discounting that, Hugh. I'm saying that there's a lot of terminals that look pretty close to it. And even for me, I want to make sure it's not a false memory, because I have a salvage guy that I used to go to, that's 2 hours drive for me, but I would go through and he'd have neat older stuff. That's how I got a lot of the initial PS2 and IBM systems I did as well. Um, and I'm relatively sure that he talked about at one point, or even had an ad from the newsletter from Computer Reset. And I don't know if he had one with the executive workstation listed on it or not, but I think he showed me a newsletter, and he talked about, man, have you seen about this warehouse down in Dallas, Texas, or Texas, um, and of course, Dallas being 10, 11, or 12-hour drive from where I live, and so about 10 hours or so drive from there, maybe 9 hours, lose an hour by the time zone. And I'm sure with him in the salvage industry, he was very familiar with other places out there, and may have seen this executive workstation, may have had that newsletter, may have been referring to that. I don't know if that's, there are some other terminals that kind of looked similar in a way, or the smaller footprint. But I'm not discounting what you're saying if you've seen it elsewhere. Now, to go further along, it looks like the 7496s went to that IBM location in Kentucky, and Richard, the proprietor at Computer Reset, um, had his contacts in the industry, had his contacts at IBM and other companies, and clearly got a batch of them from that location in Kentucky, because there's a shipping label from Kentucky to the Computer Reset right on the box. There's the addresses and everything. So they were shipped to Computer Reset. How many? We don't know. There was the ad that Computer Reset had that offered them for sale. It's not really known of how many were sold, but it's probably just a few, if any. They were viewed as being really outclassed for the other stuff that was available at the time. And somebody would have had known ahead of time, hey, these may be worth something in the end, or there may not be so many of these around, that I need to buy one from Computer Reset. But it appears that all the batch that Computer Reset received were the only ones um, that are in existence effectively, because IBM likely destroyed any others that they had at that Kentucky location, or maybe elsewhere, with time. They go through, and they had the habit of that, of going through older stuff, of going through, especially if they still had ownership or it was unreleased, just to clear space. We do have word from IBM employees like Tony, and he worked for IBM for years down Boca Raton in kind of a lot of the development areas, um, and later on moved to New York. Unfortunately, he passed away. Um, he's been deceased for many years now. But he talked about um, there was an IBM AT replacement based on the 286 CPU that internally was called the Skyrocket at IBM, and it was used internally, but it never was released as a machine. That ultimately IBM questioned it, most likely for the oncoming PS2 line that IBM just didn't want to throw any development into, and it wasn't the Model 30. The Model 30 had some questions because um, it's the earliest evident PS2 that's out there. Of course, it's ISA or 8-bit bus, 8086 CPU, still a little bit out of um, you know, older technology, offered a little bit late. But IBM used the Model 30 for a lot of the time for terminal emulation, for other things like that. I'm talking about the Ripple stuff, remote initial program load, put a network board in there. I'll talk about that, show those boards. Um, and in particular, later on with the Model 25s in schools, the I-class system of going through and um, those Model 25s without even a real-time clock, being able to boot over the network. And all the students had to do is flip the switch and turn them on. And they had a diskette drive in there, 720 KB, but you didn't even need that 720 KB diskette drive on the Model 25. So there is applications that, they could have been out there. So, we don't know how many existed or anything else, but it's just not a prototype. They may have had intended to be the wording of a custom terminal. They just may have been open-ended for a field engineer, field tech from IBM to put in whatever adapter that the customer specified, a custom terminal on the occasion. In fact, I say it's probably very likely. And again, with those malls stored at that Kentucky location, they weren't modified further for what they could have been, the setups that they could have had. So yeah, and so I'm going to get through that chatter there. And he was saying, well, then again, I'm old and my memory could be faulty. You have to make sure that, and he's poking fun at himself, Hugh, and I love Hugh's participation in my channel. It's been great interacting with him and some of the the stuff he brings up, even going through and cheerleading for my channel. Um, that we have to think it's if it's not a false memory. Like I say, I'm not absolutely sure because there's nothing to set aside me remembering seeing the executive workstation in a computer reset newsletter. I don't remember it. I maybe it happened, but I that would have been just ordinary. I wouldn't have seized on that at the time. I was looking for some other things and maybe thinking for the moment, yeah, it's cool, but it's a minor memory. It's something I don't remember 2 decades later, 3 decades later. I mean, um, and so before you reveal the address, make sure it's not a classified facility. Well, it's IBM. It's a commercial facility. Even for the location in Florida where I think these are made, it's a university setup location. It's not a um, and really for all that, for we're not talking Area 51 stuff here. Um, that if it's let me put it this way: if the address is searchable on Google Maps or to get it like a street view or something else, um, it's not going to be classified. It would have been masked out on the street view in the first place. If it had been a classified facility, I don't know. They probably would have sent it from a different forwarding address. I don't think that IBM has a close enough association. In particular, we're talking about likely 20 years ago or more of when these executive workstations were shipped out. Over the last 20 years, I even have to check whether it's an IBM facility or not now. But I would go through and check the address myself, yes, before I post it, just to have enough lead in. But it's and talking about address masking, I mean, anybody can go back to that video now that I did the unboxing, and they can see that address in Kentucky. Um, yeah, let me find out where my mouse is in the first place to scroll a little bit more. Yeah, and I've always been fascinated by the IBM. The PS1s are a neat line. I had an affinity for the PS2s as well. In fact, my maxed Mall 30 is my first effective working PS2, and you can see with the video I did just last night of how much I get into and like that unit, running that unit. Um, so yeah, I want to quickly kind of scroll through. Yeah, and yeah, and Andrew brings up that you could use a 086, meaning 8086 machine as a terminal on your i386 machine or Minix or Coherent. IBM had that iClass system that they did in schools that, as I say, the Mall 25s booted over the network, and that was an 8086 CPU in those. That didn't even have that much memory, didn't have a real-time clock. But if you booted over the network, the aspect of real-time clock didn't matter. And I've gone through on previous videos and shown that, but the iClass. But I want to get my server. I want to image the drive before I go further with it. We'll talk about iClass a little bit here in a moment too, or that connection type. I want to scroll through and yeah, and then there's the talk even of Edward Snowden about the hardware they used. So, and I'm not above any speculation or anything else like that that's going on in the chat or anything like that. That whether it relates to the 7496 or not, um, and we could speculate all that. I'm trying to narrow the focus down or keep the focus on the 7496 in this instance, of course, for this live stream. Um, and so, okay. Yeah. And that's why I say that the 7496 may have been associated. This is from scientist Abe, that it could be, that was the speculation that it was used in coordination with the 7690 clinical workstations. I don't know, for being marked executive workstation, that doesn't nestle in the naming convention quite as much unless there's an executive nurse or at that desk station where they would have a system to track and be linked into the network of the other systems. I don't know. Um, yeah, and I'd like to cover the Mul 25 aspects. Man, there's a lot of stuff that's gone on in chat though. Okay, I think I'm catching up. Yeah, and that's been the other speculation is that diskette drive door is locked on the 7496, and if you kept a diskette in there and kept it locked, or normally didn't have to access that, but that's very terminal like in this case, especially going for the point of hiding that the drive is even there, like a terminal. It because the PS2s, otherwise you had the bezel and you had that accessible. You didn't have to go. You didn't have to access a panel or anything else to get at the diskette drive. So that very well may be that that it's kind of a terminal arrangement for that door being on the front of the diskette drive. Yeah, and the P70, and of course the PS2 Mul P70 is that portable orange plasma display, and those were used in some instances where they put in terminal boards and terminal emulation adapters and things like that. That people would carry those around, lug them to a location, and start them up. Now, on the aspect of the executive workstation, I do want to bring up one of my Mul 25s. I have a Mul 25, and it's the 8086 base planar. The strange thing is it has a diskette, external diskette drive adapter in it for the 4869-001 diskette drive, like I've shown on my Mac 30. I even have the adapter here if I'd ever get to that point. Wow, and we've gone 50 minutes, which is great. That's fine. There's no thing that puts this stream to an end as long as it's rolling good. I don't mind going through and carrying on here. But the main thing to this is it has an AST 6-pack board in there for extra RAM and the real-time clock, being it's a Mul 25. And IBM even made portable, we talk about the luggable systems out there, even the PC portable, PC convertible, the P70, P75, all those systems that hopefully got to a miniaturized size. But IBM even sold, and I have some of a luggage to, and it's got wheels on the bottom that you put your Mul 25 in there. You could put either the full sized 101 key keyboard, or you could put the Space Saver keyboard in a side pocket. And it even had some side pockets for other like manual binders and stuff like that. You zip the thing up and you could pull it through the airport and assumably travel with it. Had handles on it for carrying and things like that. But the Mul 25 was a portable system at first, which is really interesting. But the system Mul 25 that I had with a AST 6-back adapter, and it was internal to IBM because I found personnel management software on there that was marked for internal use only. And so the lowly Mul 25, based on an 8086 CPU, there was someone at IBM at some level that they ran personnel management software on a system. And of course, that data wasn't deleted or anything like that off the hard drive. Had also the an MFM hard drive and drive that MFM hard drive that was so common for the Mul 25s as well. But that appears to be an internal IBM system, even for that lowly level. And you say IBM had higher end systems. Why didn't that person have, if they're executive status or they have enough of a status within IBM to have a personnel management software on that system, why didn't they have a higher end system? So just kind of odd. And so let me keep scrolling. Yeah, my elementary, middle, and high school. This is from Nerdy Organist again. My elementary, middle, and high schools all had PS2 Mul 25 and 30s for all offices, libraries, and computer labs from 1988 to 2000. They didn't start upgrading until 1998. It's listed as 98, but not 1998. And that's when the I-class purge started happening out there. 1997, 1998, even in my area. And so what I did is I participated in a sealed bid auction for my local school system, and they had Mul 25s and EduQuest systems in there. They also had a Mul 95 that there was their I-class server. And I bid on that and won that auction. That's how I acquired a lot of my Mul 25s, my I-class system, those Mul 25s and EduQuest with network adapters in them. That's how, and they were Ethernet adapters. But that was just after that time frame. My local school system, and it had, I've talked about this before. The I-class server, that NetWare 3.12 operating system on there, the admin username was admin, and then the password was just password. So I was able to break into it really quickly once they got it home. I had no interest in the kids' data on there, but it did have information on the school children in my district for that time. And of course, they're now, everyone in there is an adult, of course, now. And that was at the elementary level for that particular school, where most of the stuff was. And then the other I-class server I got, and it looked like it was in North Carolina. It has data on there, and the really disconcerting thing was that the student IDs looked to be a form of the Social Security number. And of course, those students are also adults now. And I have no interest in someone's Social Security number. It was used back in the day as identifier. It shouldn't have been used. When I was in the military, I mean, we used to stencil our Social Security numbers on the outside of our duffel bags. The Navy knows them as sea bags. Visible. You're going through the airport, you had a stencil of your Social Security number right on your bag. We used it as that was your service number. When I went to university, the college professor said, put down your Social Security number on the class. It was at the end of the semester, an evaluation of the class, and her. She had her doctorate in something, and in computer science, but she asked us to put down our Social Security, write in our Social Security number, and I said, you can't ask for my Social Security number. You can ask for my student ID. And she says, well, it's the same number. But yeah, it's the form that you ask it for. But a lot of places out there got out of that convention of the Social Security number, someone's Social Security number. Back in that day, we weren't worried about identity theft and things like that. I'm glad we got out of that habit. But yeah, the iClass system, in particular in U.S. schools, was very big. And you look at it was purged after that, and a lot of that nowadays you can't even find an EduQuest system being sold out there, or they sell for high prices for all the development that they did. And that was IBM Atlanta, where the iClass stuff originated. But all that stuff, it's been salvaged, it's been scrapped. It's there's down to the few items. I need to get back on the iClass stuff. I do have an area that I've set up, and I actually said someone sent me a message a week ago or so that I need to answer. I've been meaning to answer, and then they're talking about the EduQuest systems and him and I was looking to see if Sean Schultz was on today as well. But I got through, or I'll do some transactions with them for that stuff too. So let's get through to okay. Yeah, and I saw that from Nerdy Organist as well, that in 2000 when I graduated, they'd upgraded and were throwing a bunch of the MAL 25SX machines in a dumpster. I rescued the iClass server and a few 25SX with keyboards. And I would ask, even where are those systems today? I'd be interesting. I mean, that's 22 years ago if you pull them out of the dumpster. But the 25SX is a highly desired model now. And as I say, you can't find them. And the 25SX looks like it was offered primarily to schools in the US. It was hard to find those otherwise outside the education market. And that was when the EduQuest stuff was coming in as well. And I have a few of those around. So, but it'd be interesting to know where that iClass server and those 25SX are now, if you still have them. I want to get down to I know that there's probably been a lot that's been rolled through on chat. Okay. Yeah, the little Sony Triniton CRT. We'll try and get to that. I'll try and get to addressing. I was talking about assembling the system and getting it working on video. But yeah, the Sony Trinitons are really nice little monitors. We had them in the military as well for our remote operated vehicle that go underneath the water that we pilot through to look for sea mines and stuff like that. Or confirmation once we found the sea-based mines. They had Sony Trinitons in our CIC space, custom our our command. Well, the CIC is Command Information Center on the ship, where that's all where you had all the radars and sonars and everything. But seeing those underwater pictures on those Sony Trinitons at that time, and we're talking about the late 80s, was really kind of cool for that. And of course, yeah, the little tiny Trinitons. Of course, the Sony Trinitons exist in a lot bigger form as well. And okay. Somebody did an introduction. I'm trying to see. And nobody's late. I mean, and this is available in replay afterwards as well. I think I set it up for even for the chat comments to be available in replay. I hope I did. I don't know. I'll have to look at that. And otherwise, I hope I go through and describe the comments that are made well enough. So Pip's channel, you mentioned the MCGA feature connector in a previous video, David. Did you ever use this to upgrade a Model 30? So the feature connector on the Model 30 planer. And why not? I've got the original. We can probably use this as a seg into, as we've gone through the first hour of this live stream, this being, and I can work with, this being the original planer that was in my executive workstation. Okay. And this is the planer that has a post error, halts at 07, which is the MCGA initialization. On the Model 30 planer, which this is fully a Model 30 planer. And it's the P planer once again. Okay. Now the video connector is here. Okay. So we talk about the two MCGA chips. Want to get, okay. So there's the one that has the 72X 8300 being the one of them. I think, yeah, it's going to be that. And so the other one is this 72X 8205. And as I say, that lower one, that 72X 8300 was later replaced on the Grenic planer Model 30s and on the Type 2 Model 25 planers. Here is your VRAM. And here is the RAM DAC. This is like the font. I mean, I'd have to read on the MCGA page that's the font area where I think where it holds fonts on the system. And then here's your RAM DAC. And that converts the excuse me, the digital signals over to analog for the output port there. Okay. And this is the MCGA feature connector, this J8. Okay, and this was not on the later Grenic planers. They had a variant that's commonly available in Europe that did, but the US Grenic planer did not have that feature connector. That's not a VGA feature connector. That is MCJ. It's different pin out, different number of pins. Excuse me. I had to cough there. So at least I can raise the boom on the mic. And I have to remember to put that back down um, or I'd still be muted. And I have a nice little segment of video I did last night, and I did the first part and I muted my mic and I did the second part, and I didn't realize till later on that and I can easily redo that video. I'm going to do it just as I may redo it later on today. So that's the ins and outs of the MCGA. Now, this is still being pondered of why this feature connector for MCGA is on the planer. And there's always a reference to a digital MCGA modder. And that's really interesting when you get to talking about the 7496, because the same Trintons were the ones I've heard about were misset for the video input. They were set to digital. I think it's like a digital 2 setting. It has a digital 1, digital 2, and an analog. And it should have been set to analog. And that's what I did, is flip the switch. And that made the monitor work with what the Model 30 planer put out. But there is a thought that if this had pins on it, that you could have a board in here, just a board that went on top, maybe for the back bracket area. And we have to remember that this is inset here on this planer, this Model 30 planer. And, they could have had some other thing in front of this. It's kind of unique for the PS2 planers. It's staggered, like that, stair-stepped for that back bracket. And that's a serial port, of course, 25 pin. You have the 25 pin parallel port. And you have as we discovered in last night's video, you have port 1 and port 2. And it's even interesting there. You'd think that normally this would be the keyboard port, the thought of, and this would be the mouse port. But we do see them marked as J1 and J2 there. And which one is effectively port 1 and which is effectively port 2, in that scheme. And I mean, as I did in the last night's video, it's a really interesting video. Watch it if you get a chance, because the keyboard and mouse can be swapped on this planer. Doesn't matter what connection they're in. As long as they're connected, or the keyboard's connected, it figures out what port that the keyboard is attached to of those two. Doesn't matter. It shouldn't be color-coded for mouse and keyboard, as was done later on, or anything like that. But, just that this planer could have been designed for some other terminal. Initially, how it came out of some terminal that uses the digital level from this feature connector. Now, IBM did not have any feature connectors for VGA on planers. It just wasn't implemented. And but they did have with microchannel, which is all the planar VGAs were microchannel at that initial release date. They have the base video extension and the auxiliary video extension, and typically the auxiliary video extension. to that microchannel bus. The base video extension came along later when the primary video was on an adapter and not on the planar. The other initial microchannel PS2s, they were released with planar VGA, but they came in at a later point after, I believe, the Mall 30 was developed. We even have references to, in 1986, even, September or earlier, of when this, the Mall 30 came out. I even have a Mall 30 that has a revision 00 BIOS. And this, as you can see on the 7496 planar, the planar that was in my 7496, that is the revision 02 BIOS by those FRUs. And actually, I'm going to correct myself because Major Tom is going to catch this later on. That's the part numbers that are on there. They're not FRUs. They're not field replaceable units. They weren't replaceable at each ROM chip. They may have been replaceable as a set from IBM in some form, as IBM did, but those are part numbers listed on those chips, not truly FRUs at all. So that MCGA feature connector continues to be an aspect that there's a lot of background chatter. So I haven't used it to upgrade the Mall 30. I've just put a VGA board in my Max Mall 30. I put the what IBM called the Ps2 Display Adapter, and that's an 8-bit VGA. Has the same VGA chip on there that was used in some models, like the Mall 60 and the Mall 80. That silver cap chip, and that has a feature connector, which is kind of interesting because people that came out with VGA adapters after IBM, like Chips and Technology, released their 82C451 chip is a VGA chip that was, and those implementations, they have a feature connector for VGA on there. IBM didn't use it except on the adapter, and other places mimicked that when they produced their VGA designs, but IBM did not have a VGA feature connector on the planars of the microchannel PS2s. Is that enough of a rambling tangent? Okay. Okay, yeah, yeah, throwing out, and that's the thing too. I mean, I wish I would have. I'm talking about a comment from Nerdy Organist again about getting, throwing out old systems. A relative in this case, his father, but I wish I'd saved or stored some systems better than I did back in the day. Yeah. And yeah, I see a reference to Lorenzo, and he's at a swap meet this morning, Wall, New Jersey, trying to probably sell some more stuff. But yeah, he's a good and at least I've caught up in the chat, it looks like. And I haven't wrote anything in the chat in a long time too. So yeah, I agree that, but we all have this thing where, yeah, I have the same thing where, my wife says, well, if you die, I'll throw all that stuff that you have in the trash. And I tell her, well, I can give you a list of people that you can contact that will happily take it off your hands. They'll show up and pack it in a vehicle and take it. Um, but yeah, we deal with that from relatives that it may not have the same love of collection that we do. Um, I'm going to go through and later on, Jesse, I'm going to pull out my PS1s. I have some 46 PS1s as well. And I'll go through and show those because they're an interesting aspect. I've got to bring out the Aptivas. There's so much stuff that I can feature on. Um, yeah, that phase difference. And I always go through and I hide the webcam picture that's here from the camcorder picture that's there. And also, what I have to make sure is that I have a screen off to the side that shows what I have on camcorder, but it doesn't account for the webcam picture in OBS, the overlay of that webcam picture. So when I'm going through, well, it means picture in picture. I will typically, of course, in a lot of my videos, I go through and I pull it down. And as you see here, I'm looking up at my OBS presentation. I'm looking at my audio levels. I'm looking at how my webcam picture. Let's do this. We're talking about all that phase difference between the camcorder and the webcam. I got to find my cursor again here. There we go. And that's the other thing to multiple displays. So let's go through. We've gone an hour and 15 minutes. And I'm gonna get shifted over just the camcorder over here. You're not gonna see my face, maybe off to the side like this. But I know looking at the monitor that's ahead of me, just off screen to the left here. I should have put something on the back monitor for the channel, for this for what this live stream is, or something else, just an identifier of 7496 or some stuff like that. So let's get talking about the 7496. I know I'm not going to necessarily put it all back together, but I want to talk about some aspects of it. As I say, I went through, I replaced the original planer with another Model 30 of the same exact type. It's got the same layout. It's the same P planer. It is a green planer instead of a brown. That's the only thing. A lot of the executive workstations were the brown planers, and that is just, as I mentioned in the past, it seems like sometimes from some locations, IBM, when it produced the earlier planers and adapters, they used this brown PCB. And when they had, when they produced them later, I can go through and grab, and this would be effectively just like what is in the system. This is another Model 30 P planer, the bottom. And this has the CPU in there, no SIMs in there, but it's the same part numbers. I want to say that again, part numbers for the BIOS revisions. And we know that that's a revision 02. That's very common for these P planers, are very common in Model 30s. And the designs that were derived from the Model 30, like the 7496, and that BIOS revision 02 seems to be the most common. I've gone through on a recent video and I did talk about the going through and upgrading to the revision 04, which I've done on one of my Model 30 planers, to go through and kind of see what that additional um, that BIOS version does. And so this is, I'll also show this. This is a brown PCB. I've shown this in the past as well. This actually has a bodge wire for the MCGA section, and it has a socketed RAM DAC. And this is kind of interesting because without, I mean, you don't need a RAM DAC if you go to a digital monitor setup. Major Tom thinks that that actually is just for that there was a production run that socketed the RAM DACs because they were sensitive devices. They could be blown out easily enough. They needed the clamping diodes were put on there later on to prevent that damage in later revisions. But that's the only socketed RAM DAC that I've ever seen on a PS2. And I've got more RAM DACs coming in because I want to populate that again. And they're slow boated from China. I may even go through and put a header on that MCGA feature connector. Wouldn't that be kind of cool? And because I want to check this, beyond that bodge wire, which what that does is it, IBM produced this planer and they figured out a trace was left out or some other fix that they needed to do in the design. So they put that bodge wire in, and it's coming off of that chip that was replaced later on, updated. That 72X8300 was replaced with another part number chip, the 11F8028. And that's on your Greenwich planers and your Type 2 Model 25s. But this Model 30 has, with the labels over it, it even lists the listed as microcode, and that 68X1627 and 68X1687. That's the revision 00 BIOS of the Model 30. That's the earliest PS2 BIOS that is known. And you don't see that too much. This is a very early planer. We do see February of 1987 marked on there for that level. I, at one point, even thought it might have been 86, but there are the design of this, from this BIOS is from, I think, September of 1986. Quite a bit of a lead ahead. The Model 30 had 3 BIOS versions that are available out there, even before the Model 30 planer was, or the Model 30 system was sold. But I intend to get this going. I don't have a CPU on there, but I have so many of these 8086 and V30, NEC V30 CPUs. It's not hard for me to populate this with a processor. But I want to run this later on, and I want to go through and I want to go through and troubleshoot this original planer from the 7496 as well. I want to see if cold spray and things like that will get that revived. Let's get moving through here a little bit more in the show and tell. So I've got the base unit here. I don't have it connected. The one aspect I wanted to bring up, I've got the original diskette drive connector in there. This even has, let's go ahead and pull it out. It has some pendant writing that we've seen on others. And that's like a level CP8028. Now, the 8028 sounds familiar in a way that is the last 4 digits of that replacement MCGA chip. that was on the other planers. I don't think it's a marking of that, but it might be interesting because a lot of the 7496s have that pinned in writing on that. Now, I went through, I also replaced this is the original 720 KB drive. I have marked out big button, and it doesn't have any marking on the front, like 1.44 to mark it as a high density drive. So you know it to be by looking at that button that it's a 720 KB. This drive, it doesn't seem like it attempts to spin up. I see the access light come on briefly, and then it just beeps for pressing the F1 to continue, and it throws you and dumps you into ROM basic. Won't read a diskette. So I've got, this is the sled. I have the sled separate. I used to have these screws around too. This is the sled for the MUL30 for this drive. And focus. Okay. It's an Alps. For this one, it says Alps. And that part number is probably, and that the last characters in that are, and that's like a 62X0367. That is the sled. Yeah, there it goes. Shows excellent part number. That's the sled you want to have if it comes down to the point of a diskette drive in there. And I've seen these with the MUL30s as well. It latches in the MUL30 very well, but you really have to get it seated for that latch to lock in. And of course, to release it, you just pull up on that front center, and the drive and sled come out. Now, I did find this rather late. Kind of put items I've already gone through. I haven't tested this one except for back when. I do have another drive, a 720 KB drive that I tested, but I pinned in. I did a very good job on this. I have a post-it note, but post-it notes, as you can see, they can fall off. Yeah, that doesn't even have any sticky no more. Well, a little bit of sticky. So I sometimes go through and mark on the metal itself, but I'm kind of glad in this case. If this drive works, this is going to be the one I'm going to use because it's exact. The appearance is exactly the same. This is the drive. That's what you're looking for. It's Alps Electric. That's the drive. This has the proper sled on the bottom of it. Now, I do have a box of these drives, and I'm saying a box. I'm talking about several drives of this type. And those almost all are bad at this point. I get errors. I was getting, it might be handy to go through, and we want to, okay, we're going to seat that drive. If I have to switch it, I'll have to do, okay. So there is our, and I'll show the back of the monitor for all that too. Okay, we're going to get situated. We're going to get this thing going. And of course, what was the critical thing that I did in the planer is that the parallel port postcode reader. And I have the rig. They have the suicide USB cable that's included with it. These are available on eBay. I just ordered a whole bunch more. Well, 4 more. And the seller contacts me and says, well, it's slow boated, so from China. So it'll take a bit to get here. And that's fine. I have others of these. But I went through and I've got the Ps2 adapter, and that's the use case. So Dave Park, if you're listening, that was the use case I'm talking about for these. I can always use these. I can always include them for people, send them out if they can't find them otherwise. For a good thing that you plug this into one of the ports of the Ps2, like that you would use as a mouse normally. This is during the troubleshooting process when you don't need a mouse. You plug the keyboard into one port. We learned on the Mole 30 planer, it doesn't matter what port you plug that keyboard into of the two, it's gonna work. I went through and I need to find a source for these because the short lead of a parallel port cable, this is a little bit too short as it is sometimes. But it's all 25 pins wired. You want to be careful of that. I've gone through and tested this with the parallel port postcode reader. It does work. This would be handy for a kit for getting, I use it in this case to get the parallel port postcode reader visible to me when it was on the back of that nestled in connection from the planer for the 7496. And of course, enough of a lead for the power as well. And then I've gone through, of course, and I've put electrical tape on the back, what ultimately is 5 volts DC. You could zap out, you could short out something. I need to put a little bit more of a coating on there. Now, these exist in, I have this one. And this is a PCI and 8-bit bus. They mark it as ISA, but it's truly 8-bit. Okay, and it has the 2 digits there. Also has the same effective 2 digits that are displayed here. And this should be the current postcode. For this postcode reader in this orientation, when it runs this over here on the left, these 2 digits are that it's completed, which postcode it's got through, which routine in the BIOS. So that's the last passed postcode, and this is the current postcode that it's in the routine. So on my 7496 planer, it was 06 was displayed over here, completed it successfully, and it had 07 as the routine that it would hang under. 07 is part of the MCGA video initialization routine. And that's still going to be probed out a little bit more of what may be causing that. Now, with the 2-digit postcode readers, this is probably just the current postcode. The same thing is displayed. It's the same concept here that you have this plugged in to the system and you have this nice long lead that you could even go outside the system or whatever else that this would display the postcode that as it is currently executing. Now on the Model 30, this is PCI bus. You could test newer systems. Being the 8-bit bus, the Model 30 changed around some things from the earlier, like the XT systems, where the postcodes were sent on port 80 before. It has a little rear pointing arrow, so you get the orientation right. Gives you some voltages that are, that goes through, but the Model 30 did a postcode output on port 90. not port 80. So these PALs would have to decode port 90 here. And actually, they should just go ahead and read any postcode that was put out, any of the known locations. And microchannel takes a little bit more. They go to port 380. And Tube Time US, Eric is designing a microchannel post code display. And for the microchannel bus, it does more than, of course, PS2s. You can always get the parallel port. This works with every PS2 out there. Okay, for the parallel port. But sometimes having an internal board is a little bit more adjustable. And so that's the postcode stuff. That's helpful for getting your 7496 or any PS2 in general working. I have a link I can do for those. This is my, in fact, so this is my, so yes, I can understand if people have to go through and, well, so the link I did, that's the um, let me find a link. Okay. And I'm not affiliated with this link, but I'll tell you, I'm presenting this link as one place to get them. There's the eBay link that I've used when I've gone through to get mine. They're currently showing for $5.88, $5.88 USD, and $3.35 standard shipping from Greater China. So likely it takes a little bit of time to get those in and everything, but that is a source for those parallel port postcode readers. I should have gone on screen when I was showing all that, but that's fine. You have my audio in the back, and I have to make sure that my audio is keeping up. I mean, this Anchor headset I think lasts for at least a couple hours. I've gone through and tested. Okay, so what we're going to do, I can go through and even power this. I have the aspect I could go through and show it on this back monitor as well. I wanted to go through and show, in fact, let's go through and disconnect it at this other end prior to, okay. So I'm going to do, I'll do the connection there on 7496 side, but I want to have the monitor free. Okay, so this is what I uncovered when I took the backing plate off of the CRT. Okay, and that's the switch that was misset. Got digital 2, digital 1, and analog. It should be set to analog, and it was set to digital 1. You have all the other controls, but that's all I needed to do was switch it to analog. There's all the model number and everything else. Okay. Now, the picture is a little bit off. I mean, it'll need some adjustments, but it's fine for now. Now, the interesting thing was And that's the connection that ultimately the VGA or the MCGA, in this case, video comes through for this RGB in. And I've ordered more for the cables that I'll make. There's a place in Colorado that makes up cables, but I'll use the connector at this end. And I want to go through and make a cable that just doesn't feed through this case assembly, a separate cable that I can use as a patch cord to test this monitor independently. I've got a cable that does the same thing. I'll use this as the master. And the other interesting thing on the side is the power connection, you know, from that infamous video coming out and going through there, being fed up to the monitor because the power switch is on the monitor. And this was a conventionally available Sony Triniton back in the day. Just in this very package showing the controls, and that's the picture slider is intensity, but that's the only power switch. And it's funny because this goes to a generic C13 power plug right there. And you know, it's AC 120 volts, 50 to 60 hertz, 0.65 amps. And you have the angled power connection that was underneath this. So it just puts all the three, the line, neutral, and ground to that back connector. And these are, they're set up, they're angled, especially here's the video connector. It's on an angled plug of those. And so I want to get this in here right. In fact, I want to get this in a position that I can start to do. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I have the stuff bagged off. I have these extra long screws that actually did poke out through the bag. Now, and I was looking around, and I hope it's somewhere I can, because I lost track. I think I've lost track of one of the spacers. I have one, and these are not hard to find otherwise. Yeah, I don't see the other spacer. If I find it later, I can always put it on too. You can always, and that's just a little thin spacer, and it actually went in these bomb holes. Now the funny thing is, there are, I don't know how easily it can be seen. Well, let's gain. I don't think I had that setting in a place that got marked up. I'll have to look at the possibility of how those marks. The way I had this set before, I have to be careful. Now, there were supposed to be two screws, the top there, and those are actually affixed into the monitor already. So I don't know if it was planned for some longer screws there. Now, there's also a piece that goes down, hooks in, and I think that goes in after I get this one piece in here. Okay. Oh, and I'm even getting ahead of myself a little bit. Oh, there went that other spacer. just went in the back. I'll get those later on. Maybe it's gone to find its friend. I forgot the cover underneath. This, it was to cover over that here and get in there right, and it blends in with the back the same way. So I'll have to go through and find those spacers later on. I think that's all that did. Doesn't really, all it did is kind of, it seems like they just guide the screws. They don't seem like they are take any stress or anything else off of anything. And how are we doing on? Wow, we're getting into we're getting within about 15 minutes from 2 hours of a total of live stream too. And actually, I may want these off now. At this end, it's always, I've seen every 7496 has the strain relief and has this set up bad, just for the length of the plug, that amp plug, and that cable sheath should be in that connector a little bit better. And same got the ferrite bead on the cable too. Okay, so next, and I think this hooks in. I should have even taken pictures that I disassembled. This hooks in. Yeah, and I don't know an angle. Let me see if those marks will buff out too. I've got my cleaning bag. I want to quickly see if these marks will buff out. I think they will. Yeah, they come out real good. That almost looks like a metal. But as long as I have evidence they'll come out, I feel better. Because I could have gone through, and I mean, I should be even putting down a towel. This bench is metal, so I can go through. I haven't felt really many sparks this morning. But I should be grounding myself out, of course, a lot of time in this, working with this too. And I want this, and I have to even think about how I went through. Okay, that's working good. Okay. Okay. And we're getting it. I don't know if do I need to maybe go like this? Yes. Okay, and how does that lock into? It's got to latch into the front first. I'll get this thing down. Okay. This is towards the back. Okay. Okay, so it hooks into the front, and then these have screws in the back. I'm glad I have my headset here too, because the previous wireless microphone, when I had my back to my recording system, it would glitch. Okay. And that locked in there. Worse than I think that it would go. Yeah, I should have had somebody taping how I did. Why does it want to go in there? Okay. Okay. And once I figured it out, it was kind of neat. I mean, it's got even some catch releases on the front here that don't seemingly these. And they're, in fact, okay, yeah. Okay, make sure everything seats back in there. Okay. Oh, and I guess for the back of this, you could get all this put back in place, get this on the pedestal, and then put this back cover, the back cover of the monitor on, because that has the latch underneath this. So I put this backing plate on there a little bit too early too. Okay, so I'm just trying to move that forward again. Get a hand. Okay. So there's these two screws. And they're machine screws. And they are, and they're Phillips head. Scoot, scoot. And I'm not even aware of what's going on in chat right now. The adage might be that I look like a monkey trying to have sex. I mean, it was typically the euphemism is a little bit more graphic than trying to have sex with a football, a monkey. I don't know where that original phrasing of that came from. I don't want to drop any screws. And maybe I tightened that one down a little bit too soon. And that's sometimes the case of these things too. These where they came up with a design, you'll find that just everything just doesn't. It's close but not exact. Just like that slot for the to latch the diskette drive. Oh, and I could even brought up the oh, at least I have evidence of the time with this monitor in front of me. Okay. And now I want to go through, and I thought I'd go through and show. I looked through all the boxing. We talk about lost parts. Okay. There's a string relief that lost its sticky on one side. We talk about lost parts. I noticed one of the feet, one of the rubber feet is off of there. There's that label on the bottom side. Manufactured for IBM. That's pretty critical. Okay. Now I want to go through and I'll want to connect this up, even though I have the monitor off on its side again. I want to go through and test this, connect this up to test this diskette drive for one. And since we have working video now, and I think I've got my diskette drives right here too. And I'll need to get plugged into power. So I have outside my bag of stuff to put it back on there. I've got the angled cable, the angled power cord to eventually use. And it's interesting, the 7496s there at Computer Reset, they had a straight through cable. This is not the one. In fact, the cable, the power cord that was included with it was kind of sticky. Like the shield, the covering is starting to degrade almost. And I could have this, connected to external monitor, or external video, but that's fine. Oh, just remembered one thing. Did the connections, but I did not do the keyboard. We saw it doesn't really matter. And I have to watch too. I tilt my head and it might say that the microphone's muted. This is more even like a Twitch live stream now. Okay, so we're seeing the memory count. Okay, so we're getting ultimately the drive failure, even though I had that post-it note that was marked as being where this is good. I'm gonna power it off. In fact, I thought of something else too. And do this. Get this mouse. Powered on. Okay, where are you? All the electrical or the interference here of the wireless. Plus using my knee. Okay. Go to the Art and Tool page. Scroll down to the Executive Workstation. There's all that page. That's a good page to have. We'll turn the mouse back off. Put it off to the side here. Okay. We have the keyboard connected now. We're going to swap out. Now, the other drive I came up with, and it actually doesn't have a I have this one. Oh, that pad just come out of there? I know I have another one that the pad of the head was loose too. And that's ultimately at the head assembly, so it doesn't slam back up. Man, I may have more repairs than I'm set up for here. And despite all the marking here, I marked it as good, and then I lined out and marked it as bad. This one operated. It doesn't have a sled. But let me go through and test, especially since I just got a piece that fell out of things. That's not good. And this is the older PC convertible sort of drives. Is what the format's there. I need to work with some of these to get these working for my PC convertibles too. And it's complaining about this one being bad now too. So I have Mike is not unmuted here. At least it tells me. I wonder if it's a diskette. I thought that was the correct diskette. Let's try this one. Always, and I need to go through and label my diskettes more appropriately, so I'll know which one I have. Because this drive tested good before. Okay, it was that diskette that I had up. But I don't know if I have. And so in addition to the pieces I lost behind there, and this has Saturday, 2/26/2022. That's saying it's afternoon now. Yeah, this is the one that I wanted. This is my true boot diskette. I don't know why this one was bad, and this prevented me from, took me down the path of, okay. So what we're going to do next, since we just proved our diskette, this diskette being good one, we'll put that piece off to the side. This has the sled attached. I could swap sleds, but the thing I like about this drive is that it doesn't have that latch. Again, you've got to get this thing all the way back and then push down to get that thing latched in. Now, I talked about, and probably as we're piecing it back together, I can talk about expansion on these too. You know, I did talk about putting the diskette drive cable from a Mol 30 in there. That's got the A plus the B. And I talked about, somebody asked about in a previous video what external, this is for the 4869 external drive. So we're still going to get that this diskette drive failed. Okay, that's fine. But the B connection goes to this in the bus connection. So this would be a way to have an external diskette drive on the executive workstation, a way to expand it. Okay. We're going to have one long video here. We know that that disk is good, the diskette. We don't know. Oh, hi, Lionel. Yeah, I was very happy that when I discovered that the only thing wrong with the monitor being the that switch as well for mine. So I'm just briefly bringing up the webcam picture. My audio is still going good. Well over 2-hour stream. That's fine. I'm going through and I'm not able to use this nice clean. I mean, it doesn't have any writing on it. Maybe figure out what's wrong with that later on. I just need a working drive that we're going to put back together in our little assembly here. So I'm going to put the yeah. So I mean, I can do an informal poll. I really like this time slot for my YouTube live stream on what's supposed to be Saturday mornings. Now it's Saturday afternoon for me. And I see the concurrent views is still keeping up. Okay, so this has the print, you know, the Sharpie marker. I can later on, I can get through and find out what will go through and pull these marks off of there. I think that this drive is mostly complete. It looks pretty good condition. Otherwise, I tested it as working before. We just need to get something on this so we can get it ultimately sealed back up. I want an executive workstation that is operational and sealed back up. So let's put that off to the side. That was kind of bad thing. Drop down that. Okay, so it's booting up again here. Get my cleaning stuff out of the way. Boots from the diskette. No. I'm having things, and that's been typical of this. Okay, threw me into basic ROM. I mean, and that's a working executive workstation I could button back up. I'm having trouble with my diskette drive. I intended to, okay. So people ask, David, do you have a fallback plan? And this is all live, so you've never seen me go off the screen or anything else. Wow, they're just latched in there tight. That's kind of an idiosyncrasy of the executive workstation, I guess. I'm going to reach. We already have a sled on this one. This is good. This is actually from my other unit. I set this aside and I thought, hey, if every other drive fails, I've got this drive that I can go through and put on the system as a last resort. Same thing I've got, and that goes in the slider a little bit more. That goes in the latch for the sled a little bit more. And we know that that diskette is supposed to be good, right? I pitched the other diskette is giving us problems, but maybe we're back. Ha ha ha. Okay. Okay. Current date and time. Okay. With the system booted up here, we're going to go back to options. Now, for expansion, I could also go through. I did, to show you the like I said, the trouble I went through. This is what I did when I was working with real-time clock issues. Is I thought, hey, I'll supply external power to a riser. I'll give it 5 volts from just a USB power connection to see if I could get the real-time clock to work. And of course, I learned that wasn't the issue, but that's some of the rigs that I did in this interim to get things going. And I may come up with a later thing. All my batteries that are on these are really good still. And again, there's not any thought of these batteries exploding. They're lithium batteries. And but I may go through and put like for a coin cell. And coin cell wouldn't last so long, but it'd be changeable and lie flatter, allowing for the adapters. And this is the original riser of the executive workstation with the masked out top slot. Now, this is a SCSI adapter. I could go through to where I have external connections, only. It doesn't have any internal connection. Although you could use I looked for my other transfer one T130Bs and I couldn't find them. Like I have on my Maximal 30, and that has an internal SCSI connection, and you could put SCSI to it, the SCSI 2 SD adapter or whatever else in there, off of that internal to be like a hard drive of the system, even solid state, or you could put in the XT IDE. It was shown that I think the 8-bit guy, Dave Murray, he tried one and it didn't go. Now, for the transfer SCSI to show it, this is just an NCR SCSI adapter. It shows something I could put in that adapter slot. Let me go back briefly on video. And I'll throw a link in the chat. I realize it's a long stream, that it has gone through, and I'm putting on more video links on there. It's something people can watch. If they want to see information about the transfer SCSI adapter, there's the link for that video. Back more than a year ago. So that's some adaptation I could do. But we talked about the iClass stuff. I could even go through and put one of these 16-bit, it's got the IBM adapter for Ethernet TP. I could put one of these adapters. These are the style of adapters that were in my MUL25s and EduQuest that I had for the iClass, one of my iClass servers. It had the profile for these adapters. And these are nice little boards. I've gone through and shown them. Or I could go with, if I had the correct image for rippling, and I have to populate the ripple, and all the 8-bit adapters with token ring, even if they were the 16.4 adapters, they only had they had the ripple ROM as separate. That boot ROM that had to be on the token ring board. And of course, they only had the DB9 connector. But this would be possible to put in, the riser to have that boot over the network. There's the Ripple ROM on the Ardent tool that's available to put on these. I could go through and burn an EEPROM real easily. So that's the upgrade options that I could go through and do. Let's go through. This stream has gone through quite a long time, but I want to get this thing, and there's clips for these cables, and that other, clip that fell out. I'll get that on later on. So, I mean, this is still really a work in progress in a way, but I wanted to get, in fact, let's go through and do this. I don't have to disconnect that other power connection, but let's go through. I'm going to do an angled, and I have to see how this case goes back together too, because, and see that it fits in here at an angle. I can show the back of this, disconnecting everything else. Let's disconnect this. It goes in at an angle to get out of the way of at least all the PS2 connections, everything else. So there's the nice back of the and I think this other cable clip is for actually the monitor side, because the power cable keeps out of the way enough. And at some point here, you actually put the diskette drive. I may even have to go through. I don't want to go through in a whole bunch of contortions or anything else, but I'm going to go through and put that on like this. Okay. Oh, okay. So that does. So it's got the cable clip. And Okay, so here's the back of the unit. As I say, one of my rubber feet is gone. Okay, so the video cable comes through, and I don't think that ferrite, well, maybe it does. Maybe it comes through because you got to have enough cable. No, but that gets it in the way. And there's just too much more cable. So the ferrite bead, does that even hold the ferrite bead? Does it even straddle it? Might be. And this even has a little bit of kind of rubber. No, that's still too high. So, and I don't have the power connected at the other end. If people are worried about that. And I have to find if I can even, if that is maybe giving, no, that's doing good. I think I'm right to go through and plug. And it could be that it just takes the screws to fasten that down tighter. I want to make sure that I'm able to do I'll do the door on the back later. I want to make sure that I can do the diskette door. Okay. Okay. And I do have a replacement foot that I can put on. Not quite as black as the original, but I can glue that in place. I was even looking at this coating. I was thinking if there's a peel off sticker, something to that effect. And I wasn't able to find a way to peel that, but there's a way for me to go through and level that at least. Okay, so I've got the video cable. I don't know if I want to necessarily go, and these are like I say, the problem with this cable is I was seeing that it was getting, the strain relief was not really working for this at all. And wow, in this, and I'm not even going to button this down for but that's how tight that thing is to this. So that cable with that ferrite bead and everything else, as thick as it is, that's just not the grandest solution at all. And these, even with that, man, this, the body of this just really still seems so sketchy. Okay. So these are Okay. Um, yeah, I didn't really want. I see some stuff in the chat. I don't know if that's going to be. I don't think I set it to where the chat is visible in the replay for this. When I went through, I can't remember. I'll have to review it. And certainly I had those settings before. Um, I'm not wanting to really go into any of that aspect of the discussion either. I don't know if this thing is going to even seat for all that because, oh, okay, there we go. Because it still acts like that cable or something else is interfering here. And I wanted to get this thing spun around so I can look at the, I've got the diskette door unlocked now. Oh, got it displaced even now. How did I displace that? Okay. Okay, I'll pull you off now. Because the, yeah, it goes through to where that goes in place like that. Now there is just something still is not right with that. I think what I'm going to do, I can put this door on, even though I'm going to, okay, the back door, and that back door doesn't lock. I'm not even going to fasten. I've got one screw in there. I still have the something preventing this from being seating correctly. I'm going to plug in the keyboard cable with it like this. And they showed how the keyboard cable could be routed. And again, it doesn't matter which that it is connected to. I think I'm going to have it run. In fact, that's really even kind of, these things, yeah, that keyboard cable as it is. And this is the keyboard that came with the executive workstation. And I'm doing the cable routing like they're showing. And let's get that door latched and let's get the, because I have the diskette in there still. So this may have been, and there's that extra, and maybe this other cable clamp is pretty critical because that fell out earlier. That probably holds that video cable up there a little bit better so that this thing sits tighter. I'm just going to set it like this. The And wow, it's 2.5 hour stream. And my wireless headset is going strong. That's something else that the other wireless microphone wouldn't have done so well before. Okay, and so I just switch this on. There's not even really room for that keyboard. So that, okay, and the diskette is in the drive, but again, it's giving me I thought the diskette was in the drive, yeah. Oh, okay, it wasn't seated. Because when I put in that other, I wanted everything in place too. Yeah, something like that. And we can have it doesn't matter whether we, okay, now that I have the diskette in there, it should read it. And that's just because the all the fastenings of the case here. Current date. But let's do this. Since this monitor goes through, and I have to make sure I don't bump my display in the back. We don't want too much reflection here. Rotate it like that. I wanted a final picture to be complete. And of course, I had to go through, and it took me 2 hours talking about it in the first hour. Okay, that time is right on. Okay, and I have the how's my, okay, my audio's still going. Still get readings. Adjusted my camera a little bit. The camcorder. I wanted to get to where and we have the Model 30 tech graph off to the side. That's fine. But there we go. Isn't that a pretty picture? Yeah, I don't just have it bolted down as good as I could, and I want to I should fit on the screen here. Okay, everybody take a screen capture of this. There I have effectively original parts of the 7496 executive workstation. Yeah, and it's a Sony Triniton. And you know, as you saw in the back, and I think Home Computer Museum has joined the chat. Maybe they've been there in the chat for a long time. from all the way from the Netherlands, and they do have a 7496 that they're working on. And in fact, I believe it's a parity error that you're getting from the soldered RAM on the planer, the 128 KB, and there's two parity chips that are there on the motherboard. And I mean to get talking to you as well, because I've done the scan of the Model 30 technical reference, and memory is supposed to be remapped on the Model 30 planer. You're supposed to even be able to pull the SIMs, and it runs off of that 128 KB that's soldered on the planer, all things otherwise being equal. And it's reverse of the Model 25. The Model 25 has the SIMs, the two 256 kilobyte SIMs in as the low address memory, and the option with if the DIP RAM that you can add on to a Model 25 is the 128 KB that's not always populated. And so I'm interested in working with you. We've gone through and we've updated the Model 30 and so Tom, I'm going to go through and I'm going to link first to the Ardent tool, even though I did early on. There's the link for the 7496 at the Ardent tool. Okay. And of course it has links to the Model 30 page, the 86 base Model 30. But here is that page, because the 7496 has the P planer, the Model 30, and the U 55. In fact, let's do this. I know that this stream has gone a long time, but we are going to go through. Okay. There's the Model 30 page. I'm looking up because my OBS is running on my monitor up there. So there's the P-planar diagram. Okay. And the U55 and U48 that are on that diagram in kind of the lower right-hand corner, that's the parity RAM chips. And of course, they're listed down below under that U48 and 55, listed as that 64K times 1 DRAM. And I thought Thomas, okay, so he does have it at the very bottom of the link. I have to make sure that okay, let's get down to that. So you can see that link down there. Okay. In fact, let's go through, let's get it right to, yeah, actually I need to scroll up. Okay. So the planer is also used in the IBM 7496 workstation, executive workstation. And that U48 and 55 is the link down at the bottom, the Oki MSM 3764A, or the TI for Texas Instruments TMS 4164. And all those are the 150 nanosecond parts. So that's what those are. Even there, as we have it, I've got pictures. In fact, I talked about orientating these pictures better. It's got schematics, the schematics for the the Mall 30 there, and that schematic is done by somebody other than IBM. It does have errors on the schematic. And if you click on the picture links, the little camera icons, the first icon is for the top of the planer, and the other one is for the bottom view. And if you, in fact, I think if I go through and click, if you click on the image, it goes through and zooms in. So there's that U48 and U55, the parity, and the other 4 chips above that are the 4 bits wide. So the schematic just, I don't know who really discovered it, but it's non-IBM production. It was done after the fact. Although it is very close, there are some errors. And I actually talked about, I'm going to go through and work with that to correct that, the schematic to be a little bit better. I'm just going to go through and I'll hide. In fact, what I'll do is I'll go through, I want to go step back to, and it's good I kind of hid the, okay. And so as a last thing, we're getting close to the, I need to do an outro on this here real soon. Because, so here is the, here's that page of the executive workstation. I gave the link, and I can go through and interact with that. Just to scroll down through. And there is Hugh Fisher's machine that he's working on as well. Oh, and that'll have to be corrected. It's not the Greenwich planer. I'll have to let Major Tom know about that. That 8086 Greenwich planer identification is wrong. And there's the ROM BIOS images for revision 2, and later revisions are the same. The same as the PS2 Mall 30 riser is incorrect as well. I'm trying to remember if your riser had it, Home Computer Museum, if your riser had that top slot blocked out. And I need to take pictures of my riser a little bit more for Tom to have up and document the power supply and things like that. The monitors identified. So there's all the stuff, and there's the one of the interpretations by Uniservo on YouTube. Has a little bit of knowledge. He's got some older IBM systems as well. I've interacted with him as well. But that is his speculation about the executive workstation. Certainly people can go through and, look at that page from the Ardent tool. But let's go through. Okay, turn off the browser capture. I'm going to get myself back on screen here. Okay, but that's just a beautiful. Okay, is it different? Is it pronounced different? You pronounce Greenwich as it is spelled. Greenock. Okay, so you're saying I was seeing it early on as and man, I feel so embarrassed now. You know how many videos I've said, I've talked, I've pronounced it as Greenwich. Greenock. thank you for your input. You being in the land of Scotland to be able to correct me. Um, yeah, and that's the bad thing is if I don't hear it pronounced, I just see it spelled. I tend to pronounce it. In fact, I'm used to Spanish in a way. Every word in Spanish being spelled how it's written down, and very easy rules to remember in that regard. English being a whole different thing, since English is composed from so many other languages, and it's got its own little thing between you know Brits, or being in the UK. Otherwise, Scotland. I'm not going to even get into politics on the UK either. Don't want any starting wars between us again, between the US and the UK. But yeah, we each have our own little pronunciations of English and everything else. But I'm just wanting to the outro of this to say, take a screen capture of this, because in fact, I'm going to do a couple screen captures as I do here. When I press the print screen key on my keyboard, it goes through and does a screen capture of all my monitor images under Windows 10. And so I'll have that in my high resolution. And since I'm not looking at, I wasn't looking at the camera when I did that, I don't know how those images, I just took several of them, how those come out. But isn't that a pretty picture of the executive workstation in operation? That screen, you can probably see a little bit. It's a little bit out of alignment. It's got a little twist to it. It's more evident here. It's got this, of course, is wider than it is here. This is a little bit wider than it is here. It needs to be adjusted out. And I hope I'm not doing a whole bunch of phase. You see the phase difference between that. Thank you, Jesse. Okay, Windows key plus, and I guess I do have a Windows key on this one. Plus Shift plus S makes you select a part. I just go through and it automatically uploads to my OneDrive when I press print screen, and I can go through and edit I can select which monitor image that I want later on at that time. And it's actually kind of cool because I'm running my firewall traffic right now, of how the flow is. I hope it's, I don't know if it's running or not though. I see it. I doesn't see that it's moving for there, but that's fine. But each time I do that, it goes through and I see the image uploading, of course, on my firewall for the traffic monitor. And it just, I just get so much feedback here. And it's an error from YouTube as well, saying YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. As such, viewing, whatever, open widget. I'll just have to see how, on the executive workstation itself. I don't know. And you're saving that image to a diskette drive, I guess. um Let me see. I want to do. Oh, and my phone is interesting enough. It's telling me I can do a screenshot of that. I want to do a picture. As I have it set up. And I've probably already missed lunch, the ability to pick up lunch. I'll have to get lunch from somewhere else. I think I've got lunch, enough lunch around. Um, and where did I want to get to here? Okay. Okay. So I'm going to go through, and this is a good outro. I mean, I'm almost had a 3-hour stream here. I'm glad my Anchor headset has kept up with me. I've enjoyed all the chat, everything else of people participating, and any other further support that I can do to get others of these executive workstations working. I think that offer extends from Major Tom at the Arden Tool as well. We're glad to document everything to the executive workstation here. And we will go through. I'm getting actually chimes in my Anchor headset right now of all the photos uploading from just taking them on my phone. And so I'll have all that captured for posterity too. This video is always available in replay, of course, as others will learn as they go through and replay. I'll try and go through since I started and I have that intro screen even a half hour prior. And then I cut in the music at about 20 minutes before the live stream actually started. People can skip over those sections, but I need to timestamp it as well. And I don't think for this one, I'll have to look of whether the chat is available in the live in the replay. Yeah, and I wish I could grab I came up here. I'm finally getting to it in the outro, the problems I had. My recording system actually, when I got in, and I got in early, I knew I had to get in early because I always have to wait for the hard disk usage to die down, and that takes about 20 minutes to 30 minutes. But when I first powered on the system, my system blue screened, the system I'm recording on here. And I thought, oh my goodness, because it's black screen for a long time, nothing on the screens at all. And I thought, oh my goodness, this thing is gonna big day, and this thing is just gonna quit on me. And it blue screened, and I thought, oh my goose is cooked. What other system can I quickly grab and utilize? And I didn't have to. Thankfully, on the second time, it started up correctly. It went through and got working properly. So that was quite a bit of relief. And I'm going to do a little short video too. You'll talk about nostalgia. I'll go through and I'm going to do a Facebook post on. I went through, and like I said, it didn't come out good. I did the solitaire under Windows 3.0 on my maxed out Model 30. And that's got an NEC V30 replacing the 8086 8 megahertz CPU. And that's the same planar as on the 7496. But I want to go through and show the video on how slow those cards come down, because that was the old video check, the video speed check. So everyone, if you haven't done it already, please subscribe to my channel. I look forward to your participation in further live streams. I always do them at the same time. Start to look for them 3 hours earlier than this on every Saturday, whether that's morning or afternoon or evening, wherever you are in the world. I do them at 10 a.m. my local time, which is Mountain Standard Time, GMT -7, and just arrange your clocks from there. And I try and do enough in advance that you'll get a reminder and everything else, and then watch for the content that comes up. I hope people will go through and look at the Mul 30 video that I have up about all the discoveries of the keyboard and mouse connections and the real-time clock stuff that's still getting fed in there. We'll get the little corrections up on the Ardent tool. This appears to be a couple more. And but it was a great live stream. I'm gonna end it just shy with all this outro and everything else at the 3-hour mark. 3 hours almost of the live stream. And I even forget how much YouTube allows you to do for a live stream sometimes. And so I'm going to say, wonderful chat, people, everybody. Thanks for tuning in and watching. And be sure to join my live stream and subscribe to my channel. Recommend it to your friends to live stream to, or to watch the, to subscribe to my channel. I've been going too long here. To subscribe to my channel and watch the, the live streams on Saturdays and everything else. Watch the videos. I've been going so long, people have gone to their meals and come back in the time that this is. Thank you, everyone. This is IBM Museum. That's all I have for now. Bye-bye.